Governments all over the world officially deny the existence of UFOs.
I was called upon to investigate a very strange event.
A thick cloak of secrecy has been drawn over most encounters, especially when it appears that an unidentified craft has apparently compromised national security.
Nothing in my training prepared me for what I was witnessing.
But some cases have proved too big and too well documented to cover up, as in the case that's become known as Britain's Roswell.
There was a bright light emanating from an object on the forest floor.
Two strange encounters of the same mysterious lights on 2 consecutive nights in 1980
There's something very, very strange.
send American Air Force troops in Britain scrambling to find out if they're under attack.
We've taken a whole new look with new witnesses. We've suddenly reopened this entire case.
What made highly trained, no-nonsense military men
It was my intention to go out there and just put it all to rest.
believe they may have been in contact with a UFO?
This is unreal.
The team from UFO magazine analyzed newly discovered evidence using the latest technology
Take a waypoint!
and reached some controversial new conclusions.
I think it's safe to say,
For the first time on television, definitive answers about whether U.S. forces actually witnessed UFO landings at Bentwaters Air Force Base in December of 1980. This is case number 80101, Military versus UFOs.
There were multiple witnesses, and an object was seen to land in a place called Rendlesham Forest.
Is that awesome or what?
Bill and Pat have recently returned from the National Press Club Conference on Disclosure in Washington, D.C., where one alleged UFO sighting stood out because it was witnessed by numerous military officials.
I think the most impressive thing about this National Press Club Conference on Disclosure was all the evidence around the Rendlesham landing.
Britain's best-known UFO sighting occurred in 1980 and involved United States Air Force personnel from 2 military bases in the UK.
This UFO was seen on 2 separate consecutive evenings, and that just doesn't happen in UFO cases.
And this is in 1980. Remember what's going on in 1980? The Soviets had invaded Afghanistan. We were nervous about what was going on over in Eastern Europe. So the world was on a knife edge with nuclear weapons. And so at that point, that's when this object appears over RAF Bentwaters, the most secure U.S. military base.
they must have some sort of official explanation for that.
What the skeptics believe is that there was a lighthouse in the distance. The lighthouse was maybe flashing in the distance, and these soldiers were somehow confused by the lighthouse, and they thought it was a UFO.
I don't believe it, Pat. That's not right. These are hard-trained individuals. How would they think it's a lighthouse? I mean, it doesn't make sense.
Look, I hear you, Jeff, but that's what the experts have been saying for the past 27 years.
Sounds like an interesting theory. You know, guys, we can model that out. We can do our own experiments. We could take GPS coordinates of the various sighting positions and this lighthouse. We could get the topographic maps. We could build a model and see if that hypothesis holds water.
This is going to be fantastic because we will either prove it was a lighthouse, that it could have been a lighthouse, or not. Either way, this will be a phenomenal piece of proof as to whether that theory holds up. Let's see if it does.
So we're going to Rendlesham?
Get your passports.
Nice.
The team travels to RAF Bentwaters, a U.S. Air Force base in England, located approximately 85 miles northeast of London and adjacent to Rendlesham Forest.
Nick, tell us about the famous Rendlesham incident.
Nick Pope joined the Ministry of Defense in 1985.
Between 1991 and 1994, my job was to investigate UFO sightings for the government to see whether there was evidence of anything of any defence significance.
The UK's Ministry of Defence has investigated UFO cases dating back to 1967. But UFO military encounters across the world date back even further. 1948, United States. Captain Mantell of the Kentucky Air National Guard chases a reported UFO. Minutes later, He is killed when his jet crashes. 1956, England. Radar operators at RAF Lakenheath track multiple unidentified objects traveling at speeds of up to 12,000 miles per hour.
Now, Project Blue Book, the United States research effort, described this as arguably one of the best radar visual cases in the files.
According to Project Blue Book, the object outmaneuvers a Venom NF-3 jet interceptor. Pilots report seeing glowing lights, seemingly under intelligent control.
The incident was investigated at the time, but once the air traffic controllers had been interviewed, the pilots had been interviewed, the statements taken, really, this ended up just as unknown.
1989, Belgium. Beerset Air Force Base detects something on radar. 19 police officers spot the craft. One of the witnesses records it on video. The triangular object reportedly pulses with 3 powerful searchlights. Witnesses report the object seems to be noiseless, except for a soft hum. 2.5 hours later, it disappears. 4 months later, it returns. Colonel Wilfred Brewer of the Belgian Air Force scrambles 2 F-16 interceptors.
La station radar a été contactée plusieurs fois pour demander s'ils avaient des observations au radar.
When the F-16s lock onto the craft, it moves erratically with an acceleration of 46 Gs, far more than the human body can withstand. The object disappears.
If all these cases involving pilots seeing UFOs, tracking them on radar, could be viewed from end to end, I think it would make a compelling case for the reality of the UFO phenomenon, because when you have that combination of the professional, the reliable observer, and the evidence from radar backing up that testimony, you are making a very, very compelling case.
It's easy to associate UFOs with a fringe element, but once you get up to this whole military chapter of UFOs, it's a whole new ballgame.
During his service with England's Ministry of Defense, Nick Pope investigated between 200 and 300 new reports of UFOs each year, making him one of the most experienced UFO investigators in the country.
I think that one of the most important UFO sightings of all time is the Rendlesham Forest incident, which occurred right here. On the scale of UFO cases is right up there in terms of its significance and in terms of the evidence. I mean, this has sometimes been called Britain's Roswell.
December 26, 1980, midnight. Security police at RAF Woodbridge, a British Air Force base located next to RAF Bentwaters, report seeing an unknown light in Rendlesham Forest. At first, they believe it's a downed aircraft. Later, they realize it might possibly be something else. Sergeant Jim Peniston and 2 other officers investigate the site.
When we arrived to inspect the crash site, it quickly became apparent that we were not dealing with a plane crash or anything else we've ever responded to. There was a bright light emanating from an object on the forest floor.
Peniston and his team approach the object on foot, taking notes along the way.
A silhouette triangular craft about 9 feet long, 6.5 feet high, came into view.
Peniston alleges that the craft had blue and yellow lights swirling around its surface.
We started experiencing radio difficulties. The air around us was electrically charged, and we could feel it on our clothes, our skin, and our hair.
Peniston claims the surface of the craft had inscribed symbols 3 inches high and 2.5 feet long.
The largest symbol was a triangle centered in the middle.
As Peniston gets closer to the object, he says that he touched it.
Even though it looked like black onyx, it felt like metal.
45 minutes later, the object maneuvers through the forest and takes off.
It lifted up off the ground and shot away at an incredible speed.
It was gone in a blink of an eye. Over 80 Air Force personnel witnessed the takeoff.
It wasn't a helicopter.
There is no way that you could have gotten any conventional aircraft in there. There's no way you would have got a helicopter in there. And the other point, of course, is these are people who worked at an Air Force base, and they said this was like nothing we'd ever seen before.
I feel like I've stepped into the eye of the UFO hurricane. Here was an experienced Air Force officer that experienced something out of this world.
Now, this UFO was triangular in shape. It was about